Greg here from ATS. Welcome to today's ATS Advanced Selling Skills program. Today we're going to be reviewing objection handling. Objections can come at any stage of the sales process, can't they? At the start, the middle, or at the end. And are usually seen by the salesperson as a very negative part of the sales process. They should, however, be seen as a very, very positive sign. The most successful salespeople realise that most often objections are simply the customer asking for more information. They show us that we haven't given the customer enough of the right information to either capture their interest, their attention, or their desire. It also means that if we can overcome the objection effectively, the customer has one less reason not to buy from us. Due to this, the first thing we have to do is make sure that we treat objections very, very positively. It shows the customer we welcome them, as we want to work with them to find the best possible solution. Your positive attitude can also rub off onto the customer, which is also going to help build trust. Next, let's look at the 5-step strategy that we can use. Firstly, we're going to listen actively. This shows the customers that they have our complete attention. We may nod occasionally to agree with their comments. We might take notes or even repeat the customer's words back to them. It demonstrates the customer that we're concerned, we're listening, and we really want to hear what they have to say. Next, we have to analyse. We have to analyse what's behind the objection. Is it real or is it nonsense objection? Is it just a time waster? Is it just a general sales resistance? In other words, the customer pretending not to want it so they can argue for a better price. Is it one of those last chance objections where they try to get that last bit of a discount? A good example of this is where we take the item we've chosen up to the counter and ask if there's a discount for cash. Next, we're going to pause. We're going to pause to think about the objection, but just for a second or two. Give yourself time to think. It shows the customer you're thinking about what they said, because you want to give a considered response, not just an off-the-cuff reply. It also gives your brain a chance to catch up with your mouth, and it'll also give your customer a chance to answer their own objection. 4, speak calmly and convincingly. Our job is to provide confidence to the customer. If we're calm and convincing, then the customer will see this, and they'll be calm as well. If we're unsure, then the customer will see this and probably lose confidence in us. Lastly, confirmation question. We have to ask a confirmation question. So once we've dealt with the customer's objection, we have to confirm that we've actually overcome the issue for them. We have to do that before we can move on in the sales process. Don't assume, ask them, and get them to confirm it. So that's our 5-point strategy. Now, let's move on to the different techniques or the actual words that we could use. The first technique is what we call the limited agreement. This is where we empathise with the customer. We demonstrate our understanding of their concern by telling them that we understand. We can see where they're coming from, albeit in a slightly limited way. So if the customer said, "Oh, that's a lot extra to pay," we might say something like, "Well, yes, on the surface it can appear that way. However, once you look at the overall package, I'm sure you'll agree. It does deliver the value you're looking for. Could we spend some time looking at that now?" We can use this technique if we know exactly what the objection relates to. However, if we aren't sure, then we have to find out before we do anything else. If they said, "Well, look, that's a lot extra to pay, we're not sure what part of the proposal they're talking about," we might have to say something like, "Well, that's an interesting comment. What exactly about the cost are you concerned with?" This is what they call the porcupine technique. The next one is called the third-party referral. In many ways, it's similar to the limited agreement, but instead of us showing the empathy, we're going to use other customers. It shows that while other people have had the same concerns, we were able to overcome them, and those customers have gone on to buy from us. We could give examples such as a percentage of customers, lots of my customers, several of my customers, or words to that effect. We could even name an organisation, or indeed name an actual person from another company. Of course, you have to be very careful if you're naming a person, because we have to be sure we know exactly what they're going to say about us if they're asked. Let's assume the customer says, I don't want to limit myself to just one supplier. We might respond with something like, well, XYZ Limited said exactly the same thing prior to switching to us. However, once they did, they realised the benefits were quite substantial. Could we spend a few minutes running over those benefits now? The last technique I want to talk about today is the rephrase into a question. You might recall this technique from the questioning section of the program. We use this technique to turn a negative situation into a more positive one. We listen carefully to the customer, then we rephrase what they've said to have a slightly different meaning. Let's say the customer turned around and said, look, I'm happy with my current supplier, so I'm not interested in switching. Quite negative, isn't it? Well, we could respond with something like, just so I'm clear, are you saying that you would only consider switching to another supplier if you were convinced that you could be even happier? Is that right? So there we have our strategy and the different techniques we can use to overcome objections. Remember, it all starts with a positive attitude and the belief that the customers are simply asking for more information. What I want you to do now is some practice overcoming objections in a group using the ATS cards. Have a go using the various techniques to see if you can use all 3 techniques for each card. You'll probably find some work better than others, depending on the card, so keep practicing. That way, the next time you get an objection, you'll be able to use the best technique to get the best and most successful result. I hope you've enjoyed today, and I look forward to seeing you next time. But in the meantime, remember, if you don't change anything, then nothing changes.